Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast, Confessions of a Creative Director, the original podcast made by a creative director, for creative directors, for aspiring creative directors, really for any creative professional looking to up their game. This is your podcast. Welcome. I am your host, Jaime Cabrera, a veteran, seasoned, grizzled creative director of many years. And if you don't know by now, I am on a mission to help bring up the next generation of kick-ass creative directors. That's why I do this podcast, and that's why I've written my new book, which is right there, What's the Big Idea? An indispensable guide to becoming a kick-ass creative director. I want to do my part to give back and help create the next generation of creative directors, so be sure and pick that up. And you can also help out by subscribing to the podcast, telling all your friends about the show, and if you would, follow me here on LinkedIn for lots of fun tips and tricks, all kinds of musings, creative musings from yours truly, and just interesting stuff that you can use. On today's show, I'm super excited to have two wonderful gentlemen, Andrew Fatato and Dave Heller from Major in New York City. Major is a really cool shop. They're going to tell us all about it. It's really the brainchild of these two creative geniuses who are doing creative work for all kinds of brands. And I love their motto, which is the boring will not be forgiven. And they're truly living up to that motto in all the work that they do. They've also taken one of my principles to the next level. You know, I always talk about us creatives creating more things for ourselves. They've created their own brand. It's a brand of plant care products called Drugs for Plants. They're going to tell us all about that. And they're on a mission, too, to help creative people. They've written a book called Handbook for Hacks. So, without further ado, let's get into it with the guys from Major.
Dave and Andrew, you magnificent bastards. How are you guys?
We're doing great.
Doing good.
You guys are looking all dapper. I like the red shirt, and you got your lumberjack shirt going on over there. You guys are looking very festive and ready for the season.
Yeah, we try. We also occasionally end up wearing the same things unintentionally. So today, we made sure to be distinct.
Yes, and how would we be Brooklyn creative directors if we weren't wearing shackets at all times? It is, I think, part of the job. I think you're required to.
Yes, that is part of the job. As a matter of fact, I've jokingly said, and I think I'm going to do it at some point, is create like a place called Creative Director Warehouse, where you sell nothing but shackets, black T-shirts, Converse, jeans, the glasses, and maybe just turn it into a whole thing. Because I think it's definitely a look. It's the law. If you're a creative director, you have to do it. So maybe we can partner on that. But you guys have so many things going on. But before we get into all that, just if you wouldn't mind, let's do you guys do a quick introduction. I'll let you guys decide who goes first, just so the audience knows who is saying what.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. Once again, I'm Andrew. I came up in advertising, doing it for about 10 years. Started in Boston at Havas, Digitas, back to Havas. Made it down to New York after that and worked at Possible, where I met Dave. He's my art director partner. I'm a copywriter by background. We met working on Wild Turkey for a bit, and left that job like 5 years ago at this point. Yeah. And I went to run marketing at a healthcare startup, and then a couple years after that we started Major, which we can get into more, but I won't monopolize.
And I am Dave, obviously, art director background. I actually started my career in Connecticut at an agency called Colangelo before getting into Saatchi & Saatchi, breaking into the New York scene, and then, as Andrew mentioned, met at Possible, and then from there I freelanced a bunch, bounced around at a bunch of different agencies, from Virtue to RGA, Arnold, a few others, and then we kind of figured we could do something a little more formal together. We always did side projects together. But it wasn't until we landed a Japanese shochu brand that we decided to formalize Major and, really take it from there.
Yeah, so let's talk about Major. We're gonna audience buckle up because we're gonna talk about all kinds of stuff. We're gonna blow some shit up, but these guys have a lot of things going on. But let's start with the core, which is Major, which I don't know. I would love to hear your description of it, because it's I would say it's sort of a new take or a new approach to the agency model. So why don't you tell us a little bit about Major, what you're all about, how you're set up, how you're built, and what you're all about.
Yeah, definitely. It kind of came, like Dave said, we had both when Dave and I were out in the ether, we had someone come to us and be like, we have this Japanese spirit, we don't have a bottle, we don't have a brand, we don't have anything for it. Can you make all those things for us and help us launch it out into the world? And me and Dave were like, yeah, we can do that. We know how to do those things. We can do those things. So made the brand, made the bottle, flew to Japan, shot the launch campaign. I crashed a drone. Dave waded through Japanese rivers in the mountains. And when we got on the other side of that experience, we're like, I think, we've worked for these big holding company agencies. I think we have the skills to do this for ourselves and do it in a better way. And so as we thought about it, that was sort of the conception of Major. We were like, let's make a smaller agency that still keeps the caliber of the work high, but is nimbler. We're able to staff up based on the projects we have, which I think is so key because it allows us to really keep the thinking unique. We can go to people all over the country. We can go to people with non-traditional backgrounds, which I think is really important. I think too often the feeder system for agencies is super cookie cutter, and that ends up with work that's cookie cutter. And we were just like, if we're going to start our own shop, we got to make work that we're super passionate about. We are not going to grow for the sake of growth. We are going to grow at the pace of the work that we want to make. And that's really been our story the last 3.5 years.
Yeah, I'd say also, I think over the course of our career in other agencies, a lot of our ideas would get picked. And we started to realize, people want that big agency thinking without that big agency overhead. And so as Andrew mentioned, how can we create a model that is more nimble but also staffs up as needed? You don't have that crazy overhead of a full-time staff. So it really allows us to be selective with what type of projects we work on, but also, as Andrew mentioned, bring in people from all over the place who aren't maybe from traditional backgrounds to create some really out-of-the-box kind of work that we love to do.
Yeah, and so again, it's the two of you guys, and then you bring in the people that are going to be best for the role. You can be more selective, and you really sort of control what you want to be doing, which I think is just awesome. And can I come over there and you maybe be the third majorette, as it were?
We're always down. Yeah.
All right. I'm going to send you my portfolio. All right. So, since you do have, you've created your own thing, but you also kind of came up in the traditional through the IPGs and the WPPs and all the big holding companies and all that. Has your description of what the role of a creative director, has that changed? How do you guys see the role? How would you describe it? I love metaphors. I love analogies. How would you describe the role of being a creative director? And has it shifted from where it started?
That's a really interesting question to think about in sort of the contrast between the bigger world and kind of the smaller agency that we are now. I think as you think about the creative direction within that larger sort of advertising factory situation, being the creative director becomes about ruthless efficiency, right? It is I am telling you what to do so you execute within the margins that we can make sure we deliver under budget. That is what the creative director role becomes. It's sort of like a drill sergeant or commander, and it just becomes very hierarchical and instructive and really gross.
It definitely can be.
Yeah.
But in reality, a good creative director, it should be bringing out that talent, bringing out, what the best in people. And as Andrew mentioned, sometimes at those bigger shops, it does get a little bit more cutthroat and a little bit more systematic instead of providing that creative leadership that you might need to bring out the best out of people.
Yeah, and what I love about the way we're able to creative direct is it becomes about helping people understand what they're capable of. Because at the end of the day, a true creative, the best ideas are going to come from them pushing themselves and them believing that they can create great work. And if you can, instead of sort of being like, make this blue and write the script this way, if you can sort of guide people towards the answer but not give it to them, you're always going to get a unique perspective, a unique point of view, probably something that you as the creative director wouldn't have thought of. And that's the beauty of the business. That's the beauty of this process. And so that's how we like to think about creative directors. We are like guiding you towards the thing that we know we can sell, but we want you to take so much pride in what you're making that it can become great and based on your own talent. And I think that we're shepherds, if you will.
I think that ultimately it's all about that point of view, and if we can get people to hone their point of view or use us as a guide, but then surpass us and really bring something new to the table, that's the dream.
Yeah, and so now how do you impart, especially in the model that you guys have, then do you impart sort of your special sauce, onto the folks that are working with you? You know what I mean? Like, how do you, because obviously people are coming to Major because of you two. You just talked about how when you're guiding, you're sort of shepherding. How do you shepherd and provide your kind of secret sauce? Does that make sense? It's kind of a tricky question, but...
No, it does make sense, right? Because we want clients to know the type of work they're going to get when they come to us, right? So it can't just be anything goes. But I think when we think about the filter for Major, I mean, if you go to our website, if you listen to us for any more than 5 minutes, like our number one rule is the boring will not be forgiven.
I love that. I love that, by the way. I'm not sure how you're punishing people, but I love that. It will not be forgiven. We're writing down. You probably have a list of names down there. But anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just love that the boring will not be forgiven. I love that.
Yeah. It's something that it can feel earnest, but we truly, truly believe it, and it's the thing that we hold ourselves to, I hold Dave to, but also we hold every piece of work that comes out of the agency to that standard, and that becomes the forcing filter, because we don't necessarily want to make things that look like they come from the same people every time, but we do want the consistency to be, holy shit, this is a thing I actually want to look at, and too often the work in this industry is not that. So like if we can clear that hurdle, I think we're already ahead.
That's something we talk about all the time, how everything starts to feel copy and paste. It feels exactly the same. And so this idea of the boring will not be forgiven, like Andrew said, it's our first gut check. When we get a brief, it's that final gut check. We keep ourselves accountable. If it doesn't reach that standard, it can't go out the door. And that's really been our North Star, and it's really helped guide us throughout, every client we take on, but also every piece of work that we make.
That's cool, and I think that having it's a great North Star, and it's great because it's so simple and it's so understandable. Does that? I'm just curious. Does the whole I love seeing like briefs, right? Like different agency briefs. Does that factor into your brief? Like, do you have a section in the brief that says something about not being boring or do you address that in the brief at all, or is that just something you just have that internal filter? Or you just gave me a look like I cannot divulge that information. if we show you the brief, we might have to kill you. Yeah. That's all right. If that's the answer, that's the answer.
It's interesting. I mean, does that line go into the brief? I don't think so, literally. I think our number one rule that we tell people when we work with them is don't be boring. It is always the rule. We tell that to clients. We tell that to our employees. We tell it to ourselves. But as I think about the brief, I don't know that it's that different than any other good brief, right? I think that to not be boring, you have to know what people care about and what's going to get their attention and what's going to resonate with them. And so we take that audience insight portion of the brief super seriously. And as we think about even channels or deliverables, it has to go through that filter. Like, will anyone give a shit about this? Like, will the people that we're trying to talk to find this boring or interesting? And like it really, like, we come back to it as we test and think about each aspect of the process.
I think it's really easy, being in the industry, to think that people actually care, who are consumers. And, there's even that first hurdle that no one gives a shit about advertising first and foremost. So if you're going to follow up with something that's not even fun or exciting or makes people think and is boring, like there's no way you stand a chance out there. So,
yeah. Tell me a little bit about, sort of your creative process. What are do you have some guiding sort of principles or some ideas that sort of guide the way that you lead your creative process?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and something that we've spent a lot of time thinking about this year. We started, in January, we started teaching at Miami Ad School, teaching how to have ideas for them, and we're in our third quarter of that at this point. And it really forced us, because obviously, we've been doing this for a while, but we had never really put to paper that process and really kind of defined it in a way that we could truly teach someone with no background in the industry whatsoever how to do it. And so what's been so fun about the class is we're teaching these people new to the industry, coming from all different backgrounds, all different ways of thinking too, and we feel like we were able to really hone in a solid process.
Yeah, and I mean, to your point, it's one thing to try to teach someone who has a couple years experience. When someone is so fresh, so new to the industry, to take these ideas, principles, methods, and distill it to the simplest way of describing it. It was a real challenge, but like you said, it was so rewarding and also exciting because we had never really done that before. We just knew how we worked. We obviously had some guiding, principles, but until we wrote it down into this 10-week course, we had never detailed it out to that length. So it was really exciting to see it. It was even more exciting to see it be received and applied throughout the courses and see how it affected the work from the beginning towards the end for each one of our students. But it also, led to a few other things that we've been working on as well.
Is that what I think what we were talking about previously? Is that the handbook for hacks?
That's handbook for hacks.
There it is.
So we never thought we would write a book. I mean, not that we wouldn't, but it wasn't until probably 3 semesters in where we were like, or 2 semesters in, we're like, this is really valuable information.
Absolutely.
This is great for these students, but also anyone trying to break in the industry or just understand how advertising works. And so we basically took that 10-week course, really went through, broke it down into 3 kind of main sections, an overview of how advertising in general works. I think it's really important for people just starting out to understand, the reason why you're creating creative work.
Right.
And that is to solve business problems. And there is a marketing funnel, and there's a lot of steps that come before you even come up with an idea or make anything. And the terms and jargon that people will use day to day, just giving them an insight into that world so they have a better understanding. And then we get into creative methods, which I think, what did we narrow it down to?
Got 4 methods, we really kind of went through all the work that we'd ever done. We went through our own process. We also went through as many historical campaigns as we could look at, and we found that every campaign that we could find fell into one of 4 buckets. It was one of 4 type of ideas, if you will. And so we mapped out these 4 different distinct ways of making a concept, and then we created just a nuts and bolts, ask these questions, take the answers, turn the answers into this. Here's what a concept statement is. Here's how you turn it into a campaign. And just it's not the only way to do it, but it's way better than a blank page, and it's a way to get you started. And I think that's what's so fun about it.
Absolutely. And we'll have to do, if you're open to it, we'll do a little trade. I'll send you my book. I'd love to look at that. But what's interesting, and I was just talking to Dan Nelkin, who wrote a book called Self-Help Guide for Copywriters. And he said something that was super fascinating, which is we don't think enough about thinking, meaning he proposes, like you guys do, that you really don't understand how you do things until you actually sit down and think about it. How did we get here?
Yeah.
And until you sort of finally commit it to paper and understand how you got there. And then, that makes it so much easier in your case to teach people like, this is how we do it. And to your point, this isn't the only way,
right?
But this is a way to get into it. And then you make it your own, right? Like in my book, I talk about, this is just a guide. I'm just trying to give you an overview. And if you disagree with me and it prompts you to write it down your way, then hey, I still succeeded, right?
That's great. Yeah.
It's truly the name of the game. I mean, even the name itself being Hacks, we didn't go to traditional portfolio schools. I think that's something we really want to make people aware of, is that there is no right way to do anything,
Right.
And so that, if anything can be taken away from this book, is that this is a starting place, but where you take your point of view ultimately is on you.
Yeah. And are you guys still? You guys are still teaching there?
Yes. Yeah.
That's cool. And it's and your course is, you said it's 10. It's how long is it? 10 weeks.
10 weeks.
Okay.
Plus, ideas first. Really teaching how to come up with that conceptual idea.
3 hours a week. It's their first. It's the first quarter class, and we get them into the trenches immediately. It is. I think it's a little bit of a shell shock for them. We have them coming up with like 15 concepts a week with 3 executions per concept, and they're like, "Oh my god!"
Really?
But it's good. It's like you got trial by fire, and then they can start to really put into practice the different methods that we're trying to get them to try out. And
they also, we have heard it might be some of their favorite classes, or maybe not.
They also say it's the hardest. Yeah. I don't know. Like what?
You guys, challenging and rewarding. We'll take it.
Do you guys like put on the the sport coat with the patches on the on the elbows, and like have a pipe, or how do you transform into into sort of instructor mode, professor mode? And is it weird? Being in that?
I wish it was as fun as that. It's very much the same situation here. We're at this table, and I think the one thing we found in that teaching, at least for me, is just being approachable is first and foremost. Letting that guard down, that there is no right way to do creative work, and really trying to get people as comfortable as possible.
Right.
And that we're right alongside them, trying to help them and teach them to bring out their best. I think that's what we get across in that first class of the semester, and it kind of just opens people up from there.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying, it's also like so key. We've noticed this in every single quarter. Someone or more than one person has come to us like on the side and just been like, I don't think I'm cut out for this. I don't think I'm like the kind of person that can actually do this work. And so we've learned it's super important to just be like, there is no type of person to do this work. Like I still feel that once a week. Like it is okay. And just like demystifying that is like super important, and doing it early on and making sure that they're like, listen, this is work. And if you can find the joy in the creative process, you will have fun for the rest of your career. But there's no one who's born knowing how to do this really well.
No. Yeah. It's something that you just have to experience, but obviously these things help, right? And that's again what I'm trying to do, and probably what you guys are trying to do with the book as well, is just trying to give you stuff to think about and consider and try, and then you're going to have to figure it out on your own. If you had now kind of flipping the script a little bit, what do you wish that you would have been told or learned before you guys became creative directors? Is there something that you wish you would have known?
Oof. Man. I mean, I think there's a couple things that
or something that every creative director should know.
Oh, yeah.
Another way to think about it, yeah.
Absolutely. I think one of the keys about being a creative director that can be super hard is trying to find that balance between doing and guiding the doing, right?
Yeah.
Because as the clock ticks down, you're like, I can write the script. If we just I gotta write the script. I gotta write the script. And you just like resisting that urge, just be like, no, I have to guide them towards the right thing here. But if I just do it, then I am completely wasting everyone's time and money, and that's not the right way to do things. So it's finding that balance is so hard.
It really is. I think depending on the execution and depending on the craft, obviously you start as high as possible, high level, and try to give them as much the general direction, and then as time starts to tick out, you get a little more specific if you need to executionally, but ideally, you're able to bring that out of someone without having to hold their hand and let them take it from there.
Yeah. So I was doing my research here about you guys and digging through all this information here. Tell me about drugs for plants. This is super fascinating. There it is. You got all your props ready. I love it. Tell the audience about this because this is super cool. Tell us about drugs for plants.
So this is our actual product, our brand. This is our first major product. And it's something we had always thought about doing for a while. I think we originally, we love working with clients. I think we also wanted something that we could have complete control over and really have as much creative flexibility without it being tied to, performance or bonuses that are very much important for the client, but something that we could really fully own from a creative point of view, but also something that we were really passionate about as well. And so as we started to think about products, we looked at a range of CPG, we brainstormed 20 plus things.
So many different options.
Something that we felt that we could differentiate with a really fun brand. And so as we got into the final three, we came across the fact that plant care is boring. I mean, it's sleepy. Outside of the main product that we will not name that comes to mind when you think of fertilizer, there's not really that many others that are that notable. So we were like, this is a wide open space that we could create a brand differentiated product, almost like a liquid death of plant fertilizer. And it's something
that's the slug line. That's the slug. It's like liquid death. I love it.
And it's also born out of a really fun and true fact that during the pandemic, the amount of plant owners, us included, really skyrocketed. And it was something that we wanted to make something that was relevant for us, but also helped people keep their plants alive and was good for the environment. I mean, you can say, too, this is compared to synthetic fertilizers, this is organic, it's made from seaweed, and it ultimately is better for plants and ground soil across any sort of potted plant.
There's a lot going on here too, right? Like, we're passionate about the product, we're passionate about the brand, but also from like a major perspective, it's like, are we full of shit? Like, we claim that a strong brand leads to strong sales. Awareness is the way to grow a company, and we're putting our money right there in the mix
So it's almost like it's a proof of concept of your own secret sauce there, right? Of the major That's cool, but it's also I gotta imagine it's also a little bit scary because it's like, oh shit, what if we can't do it? I mean, it looks like you guys are doing well, but
that's the thing. If we fail, we fail twice.
The thing that's interesting about this too is that I think what we realize is just how many other moving parts go into obviously a brand outside of just the promotion and advertising component. There's just so many factors that we have to consider that up until now we have just been really focused on awareness campaigns for our clients for the most part. And so to have that full funnel marketing and understand how that works is something we've always known about, but to really put it into practice for our own product has been eye-opening. I mean, it's a challenge.
That's interesting. So would you say that you've gained kind of a better empathy for the client? Because now you guys are sort of your own client, which is kind of a funny Britt paints a funny visual in my head of you sort of arguing with yourself and telling yourself faster, cheaper, you know. But has it given you more empathy and just a better understanding of what the brands that you work with might be going through?
Yeah, I mean, it's now we know what their sleepless nights feel like. It is,
right.
And we know, like, it's 100%, it's an empathy thing. And I think that, it brings up kind of even a bigger point that we think about a lot, where it's like, to do this helps you put your own work into perspective, which is super important. It helps you sell work to clients. It helps you make work that's more effective and more it makes the budget mean something different, and for a good reason. And I think that it helps you understand where you fit into the world as a creative to like be on the other side of that business. And like I think it's such a good thing for people to do. Also, I think at a creative director level or a senior creative level, after a certain number of years in this industry, like if you're a creative, you have enough exposure to business mechanisms of business and marketing. Like more people should be doing this. Like more creatives should be doing this. Like it is, there is a wide, big world of opportunity out there, and like there's something stifling about the culture that we've created in advertising to sort of silo people into these specialties. And I'm a big believer in that sort of T-shaped. Sure, are you creative first and foremost? Yes. But I think that don't ever underestimate your ability to figure out a manufacturer and figure out where packaging comes from and make a fucking TV spot and like make a business that you can, fuel the growth of. Like more people should be doing this. The fact that we can only say this is the liquid death of drugs of fertilizer is fucked up. Like that sentence should have a lot of options. Yeah. And like, right. I don't know, we're really passionate about that.
No, and you're taking something that I've been talking about a lot recently of just making stuff, right? That we as creatives don't make enough. And I guess I was looking at it more of, I'm a musician, so I write songs and things of that nature, right? So that's making stuff. But you've kind of taken the make stuff to a whole new other level where it's like, well, make a product. And I'm sort of venturing out, with the book, but that, kind of you're inspiring me to like, what could I create? Maybe I go back to that original idea of making the creative director a warehouse and selling, shackets.
Creative director uniforms, like we can scheme on that.
Yeah, I posted something on LinkedIn the other day to promote the book where it was like creative director starter pack, and I had like an image of a black T-shirt, these glasses, and it had Converse, and then it was like it's only $14.95, and it's like shoes, shirt not included. It's just the price of the book, but maybe that's what I'll do.
Well, I mean, there's a clear blank space in professorial shackets, so if you could go after that first and foremost,
we'll be your first customer.
Yeah, we'll buy two out of the bat.
Oh my gosh! So I want to circle back to your mantra, right? Which is the boring will not be forgiven. Let's blow some shit up. Who's being really boring? Like who can we pick on? Obviously, we've already started talking about the big holding companies, but tell me more about like what's this all about? Like what's your mission to eradicate boringness? Or let's talk about that. Let's get into it.
Yeah, I mean it's we are so surrounded by white noise. Like it is just everything. I would say 95% of the stuff that is put out by brands or agencies these days is like actually worthy of ire. Like it should make you angry that you are forced to look at this like it's shit. Like it's like I feel like I think about the limited number of days I have left on Earth and the fact that I have to look at this shit before I can watch a YouTube clip. Like nothing earns my attention like ever.
Yeah.
Here's the deal. We're always going to be bombarded by advertising. It's not going anywhere. It is, I forget the statistic of how much you see on a daily basis, but if this is going to be a necessary part of evil, if you will, of life, it needs to be good. It can't be, if you're forced to watch something or you see anything, it has to provoke thought. It has to make you feel something. And so much of the things that Andrew was saying that we're bombarded with every day is just the lowest form of attention-seeking advertising. It's just forgettable and infuriating, really. So it's one of those things that we really want to rebel against as much as we can.
Well, so what do you think? Because I totally agree with you. I mean, there's just so much out there that's just it's just drivel, right? And it's not. It has very little. I mean, it doesn't even do the job that it's supposed to do, right? And it's not fun to watch. It's just annoying. What's the breakdown? Is it clients? Is it not having really creative people doing stuff? Is it fear? Is it what's causing this in your opinion?
Yeah,
or maybe it's probably a combination of all those things, but
I think it's a lot of things for sure. I think that there's a couple main things that have driven this shift towards mediocrity. I think we've seen over the last decade this false sense of measurability. We had the rise of these kind of, social media platforms that gave you the illusion of being able to optimize for performance, but so often you were optimizing against something that no one wanted to look at in the first place. You're talking about single digits because you're not making creative that anyone wants to look at. So you're optimizing creative that no one gives a shit about, and that's not a true test of effectiveness, right? And I think that when you have the boldness or the willingness to take big swings, the average of those successes ends up being higher than sort of this kind of performance marketing, A, B, C, D, E, F testing into oblivion that just results in sort of creative by algorithm. Like, it's just not ever going to be bold enough to catch someone's attention, make a memory, make them feel something, which is what we all know is actually what works better.
Yeah. So how do you convince asking for a friend? How do you you come up with these? I'm assuming that if a brand is coming to you, they already kind of know what they're getting into working with you too. But let's just say, how would you convince a client to take some risks? Like, what do you say? What do you do? Obviously, you can present a great concept, and they're like, we love it, but we'll never be able to get this past whoever, the CMO or whatever. But so how do you convince them to take some risks?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's about knowing your audience, and obviously the bigger the organization, there's so many different audiences you have to speak to, right?
Right.
I think, as we talk to our clients directly, I think the first thing that we try to do is just remind them that they're a human being and that we're a human being. We're all human beings that have a very high bar for attention. And I think as much as you can pull them back to, but wait a minute, if you didn't give a shit about this brand that you work for, would you pay attention to this? And helping them to continually remind themselves, what is it like to be a customer, a consumer, someone who tries to ignore this as much as possible. And then I think the second thing is the reality, our work beats benchmarks. It just does. We have the numbers to show that when you make unconventional creative, you beat the benchmarks for the performance in the media channels that they want to spend their money in. So it's a nice 1-2 punch. One, you get to remind them that they should be making something that they want to look at, that they would be proud of, that they would want to put their name on as well. And B, having the numbers to be able to back up that listen, this campaign that we did for Vox beat view-through records by 4x. Being able to talk to both sides of the brain really is so important.
Yeah. Who do you think? Are there some brands out there that you think do a really good job of not being boring, that are kind of breaking through there?
There's definitely. And I think an agency in particular, Partyland, we always
love Partyland.
They do
Partyland.
Yeah,
shout outs to Matt Heath. Good guy, great creative.
But their latest campaign for Dave's Hot Chicken, right?
Oh my God, yeah.
Try before you die, and they position it these people who didn't get to try Dave's Hot Chicken because they died in the stupidest way. And it's
I gotta look this up.
It's so good. Death is always hilarious, but to be able to sell through these ideas and the way these people get killed is just. I mean, it's shocking in itself, but it's so funny, and that's the type of work that causes people to talk about it, but you remember it because you're just like, holy shit, how are they able to sell that there? How did they get that done? That type of work, I think, helps everybody. I mean, it makes everyone want to make more creative work that works.
Yeah. I'll have to look that up. And I love that you guys are fans and sort of, shouting out your compatriots and fellow non-boring agency types. But I want to make sure that you guys tell us, like, what is the best example of work that you guys have done? Tell me, one of your favorite campaigns that you guys have done for one of your clients.
Yeah.
Oh man, I mean, the thing that I'm most proud of right now is the campaign we just released for Drugs for Plants.
Okay.
Exactly.
It is.
Say the same exact thing.
It is my favorite thing that we've ever made, I think. Basically, the insight was very simple. If our plants could actually talk to us, then what would they say? And like, we all want to know what our plants would have to say to us. So we kind of took that and we made 3 spots where we have plants weeping, we have plants begging for relief, we have plants singing in harmony, all while people can't even hear them. And like, just creating that very simple tension. I don't know. I like it. I like the work.
It's really simple.
I love it.
To your point, that tension of something in agony, screaming please as someone's eating a piece of toast, completely ignoring them, just captures it so well. And what we also did outside those spots is we actually did an experiential stunt, excuse me, in McCarran Park.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, we did a stunt from McCarran Park where we hit a speaker in a tree and made it cry. And in true New York City fashion, no matter how loud this tree sobbed, almost no one stopped. People looked. People were like, what am I looking at? People looked. People were like, what am I looking at? But very few people stopped. But for those that stopped, we had a little Drugs for Plants watering can, and if they watered the tree, the crying stopped. And we had long lenses. We were capturing their reactions. People just being like, "What the fuck am I looking at?" It was super fun. But it's like it's such like a simple, like, we want to give voice to plants, and like that is a concept that we will be running with for at least the rest of another year.
It's got so
many legs.
So many legs, and this idea of plants being people, if you will, giving voice to the voiceless, it can get so weird, so fun. So we're really excited for it.
That's cool, and I like that, because I've spent a lot of time doing experiential, right? And I love that you guys added that and you turned that into content. And I think this is another part of the not being boring, right? Is that it's like things can be more than TV spots.
Yes.
Right. And I think that, a lot of brands and a lot of agencies, that's their first thought, new product, commercial. What are we going to do? Right. Mm-hmm. Where you could probably stand out and do something really cool if you started with an experiential thing like that, an event, an experience, a hidden camera type of thing, and then turn that into a spot. But, why do you think that is, that the first instinct is always to go for the TV spot? And how do we change that? Because I don't want to, there's just so much more interesting things that you can do. And that's, I think, what people want,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it really is. And I think that really even comes back to your earlier question around, how do you sell this stuff into a client? Because I think the reality is a really good idea can come to life in so many different ways. And when you pay for that idea, the thing that, sure, it could be a TV spot, but it could be screaming trees, it could be, a product, it could be a million different things because the core concept is so original and interesting. Value for days as far as like an agency selling to a client, and then it just becomes about, all right, well, where do we want to put production dollars? Because this idea is insightful, it's connected to the audience in a way that's going to get their attention, it's not boring, and now let's just decide, how do we want it to bring it to life? Like, that is the conversation that I want to have every day. I don't want to have a conversation about a billboard, I want to have a conversation about an idea.
Yeah, and really connecting that idea to what makes the most sense for that type of brand. I think Drugs for Plants in particular, it makes the most sense to be out in the world with real live plants. It just was a great execution of it. So keeping that in mind, what really ultimately makes the most sense, it might not be a TV spot, but whatever that idea is, how do you get it executed in the best way for the concept and for the brand?
Yeah. And you know, I think one of the issues why I certainly have struggled over the years to sell through concepts like that is because if it's purely experiential, which is why I always say, if it's going to be a stunt or an experience or something, we have to capture it and we have to do something with that, because otherwise it's just going to be a few people that experience that, and then guess what? They go, well, how much did we spend on it? You know, whatever the amount is, and how many people came through, and then they do the math, and they go, oh, that's too expensive. It's like, well, yeah, I guess if you think about it that way, but if we would have done something bigger with it, if we would have turned in that experience into a commercial or some kind of online content, then now you're looking at, you know, millions of people experiencing it. But that's, you know, I feel like there needs to be a better way to measure experiences, right? So that people understand how valuable they are. Do you guys have, besides what you've done for your own brand, have you guys done other stunts and experiences and things like that?
Definitely at previous agencies. I'd say for major, we've focused more on
photo and video work.
Photo and video. Yeah. I'm trying
Yeah.
to think if we've done any more experiential.
I think
stuff.
we've done
Not
experiential
too much.
for.
See, what I'm doing
major.
here is I'm planting the seed for you guys to call me.
There we go.
Well.
See what I did there? I just turned it on. But no, I mean, I do think, you know, the more that we get saturated, to your point, with all these things, pre-roll and we're bombarded with stuff. It's just so refreshing to like experience something in real life, right? Especially when it's surprising like that.
Yeah. I think the other thing, like to your point around how do you sell this in and how do you measure it, I think that there's a lot of truth to this idea that if you're in a category, and it's not blanket obviously, but if you're in a category where people are buying more impulsively, more emotionally, having a brand personality is not like all bullshit. Like feeling like you understand who a brand is and how they align with your values or align what you want to think about yourself does matter, and experiential is such a key way for the brand to act. And I think whenever a brand is acting, that is so much more interesting than a brand telling. And like you're sitting on your couch scrolling. It's a completely different experience to see what a brand does. And that is not something that can only be measured in that one-to-one view. It's important to build the body of action as a brand so that you start to build a reputation as someone.
Yeah. Somebody, I think it was in a quote in some deck that we put together, and I think it was like Michael Eisner that said that a brand is really the sum of all those millions of little things, those little engagements, those little interactions, right? So it's sort of it's a culmination of all of that.
For sure. It's such a longer term play, and that's something we often talk about with especially startups or smaller brands who do want quicker kind of returns. There is so much value to that longer term, longer road of building a brand, and that takes time. It does take time, and like you said, 1 + 1 + 1 slowly builds up and creates the brand that you want to be.
Yeah. Time and consistency, right? And showing up and being there. And it, to me, I equate it to like a real relationship, right? It's like you're more likely to trust somebody if they're showing up to all the things that you like, right?
Right.
And it's like you start to see them, and then before you know it, you're kind of like having a conversation with them, and then before you know it, you're best friends and you're hanging out and you're going to the bar or whatever, right? It's just like that. It's like you got to show up, you got to be consistent, right? You got to be the person that you claim to be, right? You're that person, or if you're a brand, that's the way that the brand behaves all the time, and they're here consistently. But yeah, I agree that sometimes people think, they're not seeing, a change immediately. They're like, what's not working? Let's change gear. No, just you gotta hang tight and build it up a little bit more. What's next for you guys? I mean, if assuming that Drugs for Plants keeps going, I mean, is that something that you would give up the day job for and go all in on that?
Never say never. I mean, I think what we love about advertising is that it allows you to really tap into different targets of people and get experiences with brands and demographics and lifestyles that you would never normally do. I think that's what has always kept it so fun and interesting. So I think we'd love to have Drugs for Plants succeed and also still have our agency. I mean, that being said, if Drugs for Plants does blow up and requires our full-time attention, is it the worst thing in the world? No, but
yeah,
ideally we have both. But,
yeah. I mean, I think it all comes back to the boring not being forgiven. I think that as long as we are able to make things that we think are genuinely good and interesting, whether it's through Major, whether it's because of Drugs for Plants, like that is ultimately what drives us internally. And I think it could be both. It could be one. It could be more. I mean, maybe this is just the first Major product. Who's to say?
Yeah, that's right.
Major Brands is a thing that we need to buy the domain of before this airs.
Yeah.
You know what? Let me just go on.
I love that,
maybe
man.
this is the first of many for us, too. Who knows?
Yeah. All right, so we've come to the moment, we've come to the time in the show where we have to pay off the title, Confessions of a Creative Director. So I'll let you guys decide who goes first, or maybe it's something that you guys did, some kind of creative crime that you did together. I don't know, but what do you want to get off your chest? What do you want to confess to?
Confess.
I feel like we always think about this, or we've talked about this. There's just no secret sauce. There is no secret, like...
What?
I feel like...
I'll say it this way. We're fucking hacks. Like, we're hacks. You're a hack. He's a hack. I'm a hack. Everyone is a fucking hack. And, like, I think once you start to own that and realize that, like, that's fine. That's good, actually. Like, a person who is willing to, like, do the work and figure things out and not give up until they make something they're proud of, regardless of whether or not they know how to do it, it becomes a superpower. But I think it's like fundamentally important for everyone to know that everyone else is a hack, and I will say it over and over again. I think once
that level of pretension is taken out, and it really just opens the door for unfiltered creativity. And I think there's something about acknowledging that no one has it figured out, that yes, you've had years of experience and you've gotten a lot better, but you can always learn, you can always improve, and everyone's kind of going through it, making it up as they go. I think there's some real value to that, and no one has it all figured out ever.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I agree, and I appreciate that you guys say that, because so many times people, you read stuff and everybody claims to have, the secret formula to doing it, and I'm sure they have certain things and maybe that give them an advantage, but at the end of the day, you're right. You're just, and I think I'd rather work with people. If I was a brand, I'd want to work with people that don't feel like they have it all figured out, because that's where new thinking comes from, I think, right? It's from trying things and and kind of pushing the envelope, as it were.
Yeah, no, I think that's so true, because at the end of the day, if you are just following the steps every time, you're always going to get the same output. And then that isn't the creative that's going to get people's attention. So, like, you almost have to maintain this identity of faking it, because it's the only way you are going to keep from getting stagnant and keep from feeling like, I got to figure it out. This is what you do, and this is the output. That's never going to come up with the best idea by approaching it that way.
I've just marked that. I just marked that little segment. That's going to be a little clip that we do that, because
there we go.
That's brilliant. Well, I'm super excited to have been connected with you guys. I'm excited to follow your journey. What's the best way for people to learn about you guys? Obviously, there's a website, or send them to Drugs for Plants. Where do you want people to come and check you guys out?
Yeah, I think probably the best way would be our agency website, major.agency. And that has a list of all our case studies. It has Drugs for Plants on there, but that's probably our best bet. And then our Instagram, Major Agency, has a bunch of unhinged content that we try to post every couple months. And that will have links to other to Drugs for Plants and Handbook for Hacks as well.
Yeah, and if you want drugs for your plant babies, drugsforplants.com. And
Yeah.
if you want Handbook for Hacks, which will come out in March, handbookforhacks.com. We got so many websites.
Oh, so why did I think that? So that's not out yet.
It's not out yet.
Okay, I thought it was. Okay.
This is blank. Show them the pages.
This is blank.
You're really living up to that mantra of we're making it up as we go along.
Thought we wrote a book?
You thought we actually wrote it?
No. So this actually comes out in March. It's being printed right now. So we're really pumped. Worked with a really talented illustrator as well, Maria Contreras, and then worked with a Berlin-based design agency called Formal Settings. And yeah, we're stoked. So March 2023, you can pre-order on handbookforhacks.com.
Yeah,
and we'll get these babies out come March.
Yeah, I know. I'm going to go and sign up for that for sure. I thought it was already ready. I'm like sending you one of these right now. I thought I was going to get one in return. You're just going to send me a blank book.
We'll send you one of our many blanks.
Wouldn't that be? Wouldn't that be like the? Wouldn't that be so like? What's the word I'm looking for? I guess not meta, but wouldn't that be so crazy if the book was actually just blank, and that was that, and you sold it, and it was like this is the book. It's going to tell you there is no.
You go to the middle. There is no secret.
Oh my gosh!
You paid $25 for that,
right? I don't know. That could actually be a thing.
There. Yeah,
that could be a thing. But anyway, Andrew, Dave, thank you for making the time. I certainly enjoyed it. I hope we can chat from time to time and just commiserate and continue to inspire each other. I certainly am inspired by this idea of like, okay, I'm gonna make a brand. And to your point, like, I'm going to find out if I'm full of shit or not. But I just got to figure out what that brand is. I have ideas all the time. My wife thinks I'm crazy, but I just need to follow through on one. But yeah, super inspiring. I think the audience is going to get a big kick out of you two. And I wish you continued success. And let's keep talking.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having us. We really enjoyed it.
Yeah,
excellent.
Thank you so much.
All right, you got it. We'll talk to you guys soon.
Sounds good. Thanks. Bye. See ya.
And there you have it, folks. Another episode of Confessions of a Creative Director in the books. Thanks to my very special guests. I know I'm fired up. These guys are amazing. I'm picking up Handbook for Hacks. I'm going to get the Drugs for Plants. I'm going to open up the Creative Directors Warehouse. I'm super fired up. Thank you guys for being on the show. If you would, folks, do me a favor. Subscribe to the podcast. Follow me on LinkedIn for all kinds of great tips and tricks and musings and meanderings from yours truly and others as well. And tell your friends about the book. Pick up the book. It's available on Amazon. It's a short read. I think it's jam-packed with all kinds of great information that you can use to become a kick-ass creative director. Well, until next time, peace, love, and creativity. See ya.